The humid air of Chicago in 1970 seemed to carry a promise of change. But for Michael, freshly disembarked from the bus that had brought him from the countryside, the city was a concrete jungle. His eyes scanned the cold gray landscape, trying to adjust to the frantic pace of the streets. The honking horns and the murmur of the crowds contrasted sharply with the silence of the hills he called home. He clutched a worn suitcase and the envelope containing the letter from the hospital tightly. The feeling of being alone, for the first time in his life, weighed on his chest more than any diagnosis. He needed courage to get into the taxi that would take him to the hospital. The driver, a white man with a thick mustache, looked him up and down before asking, with barely concealed disdain, "So where to?" "St. Mary Hospital," Michael replied, trying to hide the tension in his voice. The man huffed and started the car. The ride was silent, except for the occasional probing question from the driver about whether he was sure he could pay for the fare. Michael simply nodded, clutching the bills Ethan had given him before he left. Upon arrival, the driver carelessly tossed his bags onto the sidewalk and left without even waiting for a tip. Michael pulled his eyes away from the hospital building. The imposing structure seemed less protective and more oppressive. He squared his shoulders, forcing himself to walk to the reception desk. The receptionist, a woman with a stern expression, took her time noticing his presence. When she finally looked at him, she made a point of examining every detail of his appearance before asking, "What do you want?" Michael extended the envelope with his documents and medical letters. "I have an appointment. Michael Harris." She took the papers with an audible sigh, turning to the phone leisurely. "Wait a moment." While he waited, Michael observed the lobby. A white couple was attended to immediately with smiles and kindness. A black woman, sitting further back, held the hand of a sick child and seemed invisible to all the staff. It was a contrast Michael knew well, but one that never ceased to hurt. Finally, a tall, blonde nurse appeared and called his name. "Harris? Come on, follow me." The walk through the corridors was uncomfortable. The nurse didn't hide his disdainful glance, maintaining a silence that felt heavier than the hospital's pale walls. When they reached the room, Michael was greeted by a suspicious look from another patient, an older white man who shared the space with him. "Seriously, is he going to stay here?" the man murmured to the nurse. The nurse didn't respond but gave a half-smile before leaving Michael alone with his bags and the feeling that he was unwelcome. Jennifer enters the scene. That night, as Michael tried to settle into the narrow bed, a different figure appeared in the doorway. Jennifer, a young nurse with light brown hair and a warm gaze, entered carrying a tray of medications. Unlike the others, she stopped beside Michael and introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm here to take care of you. How are you feeling?" There was a moment of hesitation. Michael didn't know whether to respond honestly or maintain the distance that experience had taught him was safer. "I'm fine, considering everything," he said with a shy smile. She seemed genuine, her smile appearing sincere. "That's good to hear. But if you need anything, just let me know, okay?" Michael nodded, surprised by her kindness. Jennifer left, but that brief interaction sparked a glimmer of hope he hadn't expected to find. The twist. A first challenge. The next day, Michael heard raised voices outside his room. The ajar door allowed him to see Jennifer arguing with another nurse, the same one who had escorted him to his room. "He needs better monitoring," Jennifer said in a firm tone. "Why? He's just another lost cause," the nurse replied with a sarcastic smile. Michael felt a knot in his throat. The harsh words were hard to swallow, but what truly surprised him was Jennifer's response. "Lost cause or not, he deserves the same care as any other patient here. And if you can't see that, maybe you're in the wrong profession." The silence that followed was heavy. The other nurse left, clearly irritated, and Jennifer entered the room shortly after, still visibly shaken. "I'm sorry about that," she said, adjusting Michael's sheets as if trying to divert attention. Michael looked at her, admiring her courage. "You didn't have to do that." She paused and looked him in the eyes. "I had to." In that moment, a seed was planted between them. It wasn't friendship yet, but something stronger than casual kindness. A silent promise that, even in a place that treated him as invisible, someone saw him. Walter, the other patient in the room, despite his initial hostility, Walter reveals himself to be a war veteran embittered by pain, which has turned him into a difficult figure. He and Michael begin to exchange hesitant words, marked by mutual distrust. Marcy, another nurse, a colleague of Jennifer. Marcy seems friendly, but her intentions are more complex. She supported Jennifer, but secretly feels jealous of her dedication to the patients. Michael agreed with the distant sound of footsteps echoing in the hospital corridors. The morning brought the same sterile and impersonal air as the previous night, but the emotional exhaustion felt different. Now, there was a slight glimmer of curiosity about what that day would bring. As he adjusted the pillow behind his head, a movement on the other side of the room caught his attention. Walter, the war veteran sharing the space with him, murmured something inaudible while reading a folded newspaper. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a lost gaze, like someone who had seen more than he wished and preferred not to remember. "Did you sleep well?" Michael said, risking a conversation. Walter huffed without taking his eyes off the newspaper. "In here? I doubt anyone sleeps well." Michael shifted to the side, understanding the message. He didn't press further, but something about Walter's dry moment made him think that he held more inside than he let on. Jennifer returns. The silence was interrupted by Jennifer's arrival. Her white uniform shone, but her eyes carried signs of fatigue. She entered with a clipboard and a tray of medications, her sincere smile reappearing when she saw Michael awake. "Good morning. Ready for another exciting day?" she said while checking his specific signs. "I don't even know what to expect," Michael replied. "Well, I'll do my best to make sure it's not too bad." Walter let out a short, sarcastic laugh. "Good luck with that, nurse." Jennifer looked at him, a mix of patience and firmness in her gaze. "Walter, I know you enjoy complaining, but let's try to keep the mood light, okay?" He offered the newspaper as a shield. "Whatever." Michael watched their interaction with curiosity. There was something familiar in Walter's bitterness, something that reminded him of Ethan, his brother, who always carried the family's burdens. When Jennifer left, Michael decided to take a chance. "You don't seem to like it here much." Walter lowered the newspaper, looking at him. "Do you like it?" "No. But it seems like you hate it more." There was a silence before Walter replied. "That's what happens when you come in and out of places like this for years." Michael wanted to ask more, but he sensed that was all Walter was willing to offer at that moment. Marcy and the tense environment. While Michael reflected on their conversation, another nurse entered the room. Marcy. She was blonde, with a perfect smile and precise movements. Unlike Jennifer, her kindness felt rehearsed, something Michael picked up on immediately. "How are we doing today, folks?" she said, placing her hands on her hips. Walter merely grumbled, while Michael politely replied, "Well, thank you." Marcy looked at Michael for a moment, as if trying to gauge something. "Jennifer mentioned you. Seems she has a special care for you here." Michael didn't know how to respond. The phrase seemed innocent, but there was something in her tone that suggested otherwise. "She's good at what she does," he finally said. "Yeah, she tries. Sometimes she tries too hard," Marcy said before leaving, her smile not reaching her eyes. That brief interaction left Michael uncomfortable. He still didn't understand the power games in that hospital, but something told him that Jennifer was more involved in it than she let on. The conflict in the hallway. That afternoon, while Michael took a brief walk down the hallway to stretch his legs, he witnessed a scene that would change his perception of the place. Jennifer stood with her arms crossed, facing a small group of nurses and doctors. Among them was Marcy. "I've already said, he needs closer monitoring," Jennifer said, her voice firm. "Jennifer, you're exaggerating. There are patients with more severe issues than this," one of the doctors shot back. "He has just as much right to care as anyone else. This isn't optional." Marcy intervened, with a false conciliatory tone. "No one is saying he doesn't deserve care, but you need to prioritize. It's impossible to give special attention to everyone." Jennifer opened her lips, clearly struggling against frustration. "It's not about special attention. It's about doing the job right." Michael, hidden behind the wall, felt a wave of gratitude and guilt at the same time. Gratitude because someone was willing to fight for him. Guilt because it seemed to be making Jennifer's life harder. A moment of candor. Later, Jennifer appeared in his room, her smile a bit dimmer than usual. "How are you?" she said while checking his specific signs. "I think the question is how you are," Michael replied, not hiding his concern. Jennifer looked at him surprised. For a moment, it seemed she would choose to ignore the comment, but something in Michael made her change her mind. "I'm fine. It's just that sometimes it gets difficult." "Difficult how?" She hesitated before responding. Not everyone here believes that all patients deserve the same care. And sometimes, fighting against that is exhausting. Michael wanted to say something comforting, but he felt that words wouldn't be enough. He simply nodded, showing that he understood more than she could imagine. Walter shows another side. When Jennifer left, Walter looked at Michael, this time without the newspaper as a barrier. She's fluorescent, but that could end badly for her. Michael stared at him. Why? Walter shrugged. Because people like her don't last long in places like this. Waiting has a price. There was a moment of silence before Walter continued. But it's good to see that there are still people who care. Even if it's futile. Michael realized that behind Walter's bitterness, there was a spark of respect. Perhaps that man wasn't as lost as he seemed. As the nights at St. Mary Hospital were long, Michael began to feel that time worked differently here. The cold, constant light in the corridor made it seem like it was never day, but the sounds of the outside world, cars, voices, life, were a reminder that time didn't stop for anyone. Not even for him. That morning, the usual silence was broken by something he didn't expect. Laughter. It was uncommon in that heavy, profound environment, so Michael turned his head to see who was in the hallway. It was Jennifer. She was talking to a young black woman with braided hair and a cleaning uniform. The girl gestured enthusiastically while Jennifer laughed at something she said. The sight was so unexpected that Michael stood still, watching. Jennifer caught his gaze and beckoned him over. Michael, this is Chloe. She takes care of more things around here than she should. Chloe extended her hand to him, her smile warm and unpretentious. You're the famous Michael. Jennifer talks a lot about you. I hope it's all good things, he replied, shaking her hand with a slight smile. Oh, you'd like to hear, but I'd better not spoil the surprises. Jennifer rolled her eyes, but the playful expression didn't fade. She exaggerates. But Chloe is one of the few decent people around here. Chloe laughed. And you get into a lot of trouble trying to be the second. Chloe stayed there for a few minutes as Michael asked more about her. It was fascinating to hear someone who shared some of the same struggles he faced. Chloe grew up in a poor neighborhood in the city and faced prejudice every day in the hospital, both from staff and patients. But I don't care, she said, crossing her arms confidently. If I let them see me as lesser, that's what I'll be. I'm not giving anyone that satisfaction. There was a strength in Chloe that Michael admired. Unlike him, who felt crushed by the environment, she seemed to use others' disdain as fuel. And you, how are you dealing with all of this? She asked, looking directly at Michael. He hesitated before answering. I'm just trying to survive. Chloe nodded, understanding more of what he was getting at. Well, you're not in the right place to learn how to survive. This hospital is like a city. Either you face it, or you let it swallow you. Later, as Michael reflected on his conversation with Chloe, Walter decided to break the usual silence between them. The girl is right. This place is like a battlefield, he said, shifting in his bed. It seems you know the battlefield well, Michael replied, trying to engage Walter in something more personal. Walter was silent for a few seconds, but something in Michael's expression convinced him to continue. I spent 2 years in Vietnam. Then some time dealing with the ghosts. And now I'm here. Michael didn't know what to say. Walter had shared something so personal, and he realized the man was expecting a certain reaction. It sounds like you've been through a lot, Michael finally said. Walter let out a bitter laugh. I have. But you know what's worse? It wasn't a war. It was coming home and realizing that none of it made a difference. The heavy tone of the conversation left the room silent for a few moments. Michael felt there was more to Walter's story, but he knew he would only share it when he was ready. As Michael processed his conversation with Walter, something outside caught his attention. Jennifer was arguing again, this time with 2 doctors. She seemed more anxious than before, and the exchanged words were more intense. Michael could hear snippets of the conversation. It's not about preference, it's about what's right. Jennifer said, almost pleading. Right. Right for whom? You don't understand how things work here, one of the doctors replied, visibly irritated. Jennifer didn't back down, but it was clear she was facing greater resistance than before. Later, when she came to Michael's room, she looked visibly shaken. She tried to smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Are you okay? He asked, concerned. Jennifer hesitated before answering. Just a little tired. Michael wanted to press, but her expression suggested he should let it go for another time. That night, as Michael tried to sleep, he heard voices again. It was Chloe, who seemed to be arguing with Jennifer in the hallway. "You can't carry all of this alone," Chloe said firmly. "And who else is going to do it?" Jennifer replied, almost in a desperate sigh. "They don't care, Chloe. Someone needs to care. But at what cost? You can't save the whole world." Michael followed Chloe's footsteps as she walked away and imagined Jennifer, alone in the hallway. He knew something was about to change, and somehow, he would be a part of it. The day began differently at St. Mary Hospital. A strange energy coursed through the halls, as if everyone knew something was about to happen, but no one wanted to talk about it. Michael felt the tense atmosphere even before Jennifer entered the room to check on his specific signs. When she finally appeared, her smile was more restrained than usual. "Good morning, Michael. How are you feeling today?" "Better than you, it seems," he replied, trying to lighten the mood with humor. Jennifer chuckled softly, but her eyes revealed exhaustion. "Just a complicated day. Nothing for you to worry about." Michael didn't press, but he noticed she avoided looking directly at him as she adjusted the sheets. Before he could ask more, Chloe entered the room, carrying a mop and bucket but with a worried expression on her face. "Did you hear?" she said, looking straight at Jennifer. Jennifer shook her head, signaling for Chloe to be quiet. Michael saw a silent exchange of glances and felt a tightness in his chest. "What did you hear?" I asked, looking from Jennifer to Chloe. Jennifer sighed, as if she was about to explain, but Chloe interrupted her. "One of the patients in the next ward, he didn't make it." The silence in the room was immediate. Michael looked at Chloe, who was staring at the floor, and then at Jennifer, who seemed to be searching for the right words. "This happens, Michael," Jennifer finally said in a calm tone. "Some people come here in very serious conditions, and we can't always help." "That's not all, Jennifer, and you know it," Chloe insisted, crossing her arms. "Their negligence killed that man." The argument heated up. Jennifer looked at Chloe, as if asking her to stop. But Chloe, determined, continued. "He waited hours for treatment because he wasn't a priority. And now he's dead." Michael felt a chill. It was impossible not to think that it could be him in that situation, treated as expected. "Is that true?" he said, his voice low but filled with tension. Jennifer hesitated before answering. "We don't know all the details yet, but it's possible there was a protocol error." "A protocol error?" Michael repeated incredulously. "You mean he died because they didn't want to treat him?" "It's not that simple," Jennifer replied, trying to remain calm. "There are many variables involved, Michael." "Right. But one of those variables was the fact that he was like me." Jennifer didn't answer immediately. Chloe, next to her, crossed her arms and waited, as if she wanted to see how far a nurse was willing to go. "I'm not going to lie to you," Jennifer finally said. "Prejudice is still a reality here. And I do what I can to fight against it. But sometimes, it's not enough." Her honesty hit Michael like a punch. He knew that Jennifer was one of the few people in the hospital who truly cared, but hearing that she was also fighting against such an indifferent system was devastating. Walter reveals another layer. Later, as Michael tried to digest what he had heard, Walter decided to interfere. "Now you're starting to understand how things work around here." Michael looked at him, frustrated. "Did you know this was happening?" "Of course I did. And you knew it too. You just didn't want to admit it." "That doesn't make any of this less wrong, Walter." Walter laughed bitterly. "Of course it's wrong. But what are you going to do? Get angry? Make pretty speeches? None of that will change what happens here." Michael fell silent, but Walter's words irritated him. He knew the man was partly right, but he also knew he had to believe there was something that could be done. "Maybe you've already given up, but I won't," he finally said. Walter raised an eyebrow, as if challenging Michael to prove his words. A new threat. In the middle of the afternoon, the tension in the hospital reached a critical point. A group of relatives of deceased patients entered the building, demanding answers. Their voices echoed through the halls, creating an atmosphere of widespread discomfort. Jennifer was called to speak with the higher-ups, and Chloe was quickly taken away, apparently to prevent her from making any explosive comments. Michael, trapped in his room, felt anxiety rising. He knew this situation wouldn't end well for anyone. Shortly after, Jennifer returned to the room, pale and nervous. "What happened?" Michael asked immediately. They're trying to cover everything up, she said, almost in a whisper. We're saying the patient was already terminal and that there was nothing that could be done. But that's not true, Michael insisted. I know. And you know. But they're more concerned about the hospital's reputation than the truth. And you? Are you going to accept that? Jennifer looked at him, the pain visible in her eyes. I still don't know what I'm going to do. Jennifer's decision. That night, while Michael reflected on everything that had happened, Jennifer returned to the room. She looked more determined than before. I've decided that I'm going to report what happened, she said, looking directly at Michael. I know it's going to be risky, but I can't keep pretending that everything is fine. And if it costs you your job? He said. Then so be it. But I won't be an accomplice to this. Michael felt a mix of admiration and fear for her. Jennifer was willing to confront a system that could easily destroy her, all because she believed it was the right thing to do. The alliance with Chloe and Michael. Before leaving, Jennifer looked at Michael with a cautious expression. I'm going to need your help. And maybe Chloe's too. My help? How? Michael said. You can be a voice they can't ignore, Michael. You can tell your story. He knew she was right, but the idea of exposing himself made him nervous. Still, for the first time since he arrived at the hospital, he felt he had an opportunity to make a difference. Michael spent the night awake. Jennifer's words echoed in his mind like an incessant drum. You can be a voice they can't ignore. But how? He was just one man among many, a patient who could barely find space to breathe in a hospital that treated him as invisible. The idea of speaking publicly about his experience seemed impossible, but the determination in Jennifer's eyes made him question his doubts. The next morning, Jennifer arrived early at the room, with Chloe by her side. Both were more determined than ever. We need to act before they cover everything up for good, Jennifer said while adjusting the medical records on the clipboard. And what exactly does that mean? Michael said, trying to hide his nervousness. Chloe, with her contagious energy, shined brightly. It meant it was time to stir things up. They won't be able to ignore us if we make enough noise. Jennifer set aside a clipboard and turned directly to Michael. You're not alone, Michael. We're going to face this together. But we need you to tell your story, so people know what's happening here. Michael hesitated. He felt the weight of a decision that seemed bigger than himself. But before he could respond, the bedroom door swung open abruptly. A new force in the room. A man entered. Tall in a suit and tie, carrying a briefcase and an expression that exuded authority. Jennifer immediately tensed, and Chloe crossed her arms, as if she already knew what was coming. I'm Henry Calloway, the hospital's administrative director, the man announced, not waiting for introductions. I need to talk to you. He looked at Jennifer and Chloe with disdain before turning to Michael. Mr. Harris, on behalf of the hospital, I want to assure you that we are committed to providing the best possible care for you and all our patients. Michael didn't respond. He knew that this man wasn't there out of genuine concern. This includes resolving any misunderstandings that may have arisen regarding the patient who passed away yesterday. Calloway continued. I want you to know that we are conducting an internal investigation. Jennifer stepped forward, not hiding her confidence. Internal investigation? That means covering up the truth while hoping everything just disappears. Calloway turned to her, the polite smile fading. Nurse Spencer, I suggest you choose your words carefully. Chloe interjected. Or what? You'll try to silence us like you always do? Calloway ignored Chloe and returned to Michael. Mr. Harris, any inquiries you have will be taken very seriously. But I assure you there is no need to expose these issues to the public. Michael felt the weight of everyone's gaze in the room. He knew Calloway was trying to intimidate him, but he also knew this was the moment to decide. It's not just about me, Michael finally said, his voice steady. It's about everyone who has been treated as less than human in this hospital. Calloway opened his mouth to respond but was interrupted by Jennifer. That's enough. We're not going to stay silent. Michael's decision. After Calloway left, visibly irritated, Michael looked at Jennifer and Chloe. His heart raced, but he also felt a strength he hadn't recognized before. What do you need me to do? He said. Jennifer smiled, the sparkle evident in her expression. First, we need to organize the records. If we can gather evidence of other cases of negligence, it will be harder for them to ignore us. Chloe agreed. I know some people who can help get this story to the press. But we need to be careful. They will try to silence us. They may try, Michael replied. But I've been silenced for too long. Walter shows his worth. Later that day, while Jennifer and Chloe discussed their next steps, Walter, who had seemed oblivious until then, decided to speak up. Do you know what you're getting into? He asked, looking at Michael seriously. I know it's dangerous, but I have no choice, Michael replied. Walter shook his head. Thoughtful. This could end badly for all of you. But maybe I can help. Michael and Jennifer looked at him surprised. How? Jennifer asked. Walter sighed, as if bracing himself for something difficult. I have contacts at the local newspaper. Friends who owe me favors. I can make sure they hear what you have to say. Jennifer beamed, surprised by Walter's change of attitude. That would be amazing, Walter. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he replied with a half-smile. They might publish it, but that doesn't mean it will change anything. However, Michael felt this was an important step. For the first time, it seemed like they had a real chance to make a difference. A new obstacle. By the end of the day, as Jennifer organized the medical records, she was called to Calloway's office. She returned an hour later, pale and visibly shaken. What happened? Chloe asked. Jennifer took a deep breath before answering. They're pulling me off Michael's case. They said it's to preserve my impartiality. They want to silence you, Chloe said, outraged. Jennifer agreed. But that won't stop me. Michael looked at her, admiring her determination. He knew Jennifer was risking everything, but he also knew she was the reason he still had hope. The next morning, the atmosphere in the hospital was a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Jennifer, officially removed from Michael's case, refused to sit idly by. With Chloe and Walter working alongside her, there was a plan in motion. The feeling that they were close to something big kept everyone on edge, but also aware of the danger. Michael, sitting on his bed, reviewed the papers Jennifer had brought him. Medical records, notes about delays in care, similar cases to the patient who had passed away days before. That's a lot of information, he said, shaking his head. And it's just a part of it, Chloe replied, entering the room with a serious expression. I'm sure there's more hidden in our files. The problem is accessing it without drawing attention. Michael felt the weight of responsibility, but something inside him pushed him to keep going. Has Walter managed to talk to his contact at the newspaper yet? He asked. Chloe nodded. Yes, they're eager to hear, but they'll only publish if we have something solid. Testimonies, evidence. We need it all. Then we have to hurry. Jennifer and the search for evidence. While Michael and Chloe were working in the room, Jennifer stayed outside the hospital, pretending to be busy with minor tasks but keeping an eye out for an opportunity. She knew accessing the internal files would be risky, but she also knew it was her best chance. As she passed the record room, she saw the door ajar. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside and began searching for documents related to the deceased patient. The files were organized but incomplete. It was evident that something had been removed. Looking for something, Spencer? Jennifer froze at the sound of Marcy's voice behind her. Slowly turning around, she tried to maintain a neutral expression. I'm checking to see if the records are complete. It seems some information is missing. Marcy tilted her head, a sarcastic smile on her face. You know you shouldn't be here. And you know something is wrong with this hospital. For a moment, Marcy's smile vanished. She closed the door behind her, lowering her voice. Jennifer, you're playing with fire. Calloway is already irritated with you. If you keep this up, there will be no turning back. Jennifer crossed her arms, firm. And you? Are you going to keep pretending everything is fine? Marcy stared at her, the internal conflict evident in her expression. Finally, she sighed. You don't understand. Some of us don't have the luxury of challenging the system. Jennifer stepped forward. And if no one challenges it, how will things change? Marcy didn't respond. Without another word, she left the room, leaving Jennifer alone. Walter bridges the gap. At the end of the day, Walter entered Michael's room, something rare. He brought a folded newspaper and a stack of papers. I spoke with my friend at the newspaper, he said, throwing the material on Michael's bed. He said they will publish it, but only if someone is willing to go public. Michael looked at the papers and then at Walter. Are you talking about me? I am. And you? Can't I share what I know? Walter laughed humorlessly. No one cares about an old bitter man. But you have something that people will listen to. Michael fell silent, staring at the papers. He knew this was a unique opportunity, but he also knew that by doing this, there would be no turning back. The first major twist. That night, while Jennifer and Chloe discussed their next steps, an alarm blared in the hospital. It was the kind of thing that made everyone freeze in place. "What's happening?" Michael said, looking at Chloe. Chloe ran to the door, peering into the hallway. It seems someone tried to access the hospital's servers. Servers? Who would do that? Before she could answer, Jennifer burst into the room, breathless. "We need to be quick. They're locking down access to the records." "Locking down why?" Chloe said. Jennifer hesitated before answering. "Because we know we're close to discovering something." Michael felt his stomach churn. The hospital was clearly on high alert, and that only made the situation more dangerous for all of them. Michael's dilemma. That night, while everyone tried to plan their next steps, Michael found himself alone with his thoughts. He looked at the materials Walter had left and felt the weight of responsibility. He knew that exposing what was happening was the right thing to do, but he also knew it could have consequences not just for him, but for Jennifer, Chloe, and even Walter. Finally, he decided he could no longer back down. He took the papers and began organizing everything he knew, preparing to tell his story. Michael had never felt such pressure. Sitting on the edge of the bed, with papers scattered around him, he tried to organize his thoughts while the voices in his head confronted him. Every decision felt heavy with meaning. Exposing what he knew would mean directly challenging the hospital, risking everything, but staying silent would be even worse. Jennifer entered the room, bringing coffee and a notebook. "I know this isn't easy," she said, pulling a chair to sit beside him. "But you're not alone, Michael." He nodded, though he still felt the knot in his throat. "And what if nothing changes? What if they just ignore it?" Jennifer placed her hand on his shoulder, firm. "Then at least we'll know we tried." Chloe appeared at the door shortly after, with a tired smile. "I don't know how you still believe, Jennifer, but I'm glad you do." Walter reveals more secrets. While Michael was working on his account, Walter decided to break the usual silence. He entered the room with a serious expression, carrying a time-worn envelope. "This might help," he said, handing the envelope to Michael. Michael opened it and found old newspaper clippings, court records, and letters, all detailing other cases of negligence and mistreatment at the hospital, some dating back years. "How did you get this?" Michael asked, surprised. Walter sighed, sitting on his bed. "When you spend enough time here, you hear things. I made friends with people who wanted to fight but ended up resisting. This is what's left." Jennifer grabbed some of the papers, reading quickly. "This is amazing, Walter. But why now?" "Because until now, I didn't believe it was worth it. But you made me change my mind." Calloway's strike. As the group prepared, the hospital was also taking action. Calloway knew something was happening and was ramping up his efforts. Jennifer received a memo requiring her presence at a disciplinary meeting, while Chloe noticed her shifts were being reduced, an obvious maneuver to limit her. That afternoon, Marcy appeared in Michael's room. Her expression was serious, but different from her usual sarcasm. "You need to be careful," she said, closing the door behind her. Michael, suspicious, crossed his arms. "Why?" "Calloway knows you're planning something. He has eyes everywhere. And you're one of those eyes?" Marcy sighed, looking tired. "I'm not your enemy, Michael. But you need to understand that if you keep this up, you could end up losing everything." "I don't have much to lose," he replied. Marcy fell silent for a moment before turning to leave. "I hope you know what you're doing." The first attempt at breaking in. That night, while everyone was sleeping, Michael heard footsteps outside the room. He got up slowly, peeking through the small gap of the door. 2 security guards were in the hallway, talking in low voices, but it was clear they weren't there by accident. He went back to bed, trying to stay calm. He knew this was a warning. Calloway was willing to intimidate him, and maybe even worse. The next morning, Jennifer confirmed his suspicions. "They're trying to isolate you, Michael. They want you to give up before everything goes public." Chloe shook her head, irritated. "These guys are lower than I imagined." Michael's final decision. After days of preparation and tension, Michael finally made his decision. He faced Jennifer, Chloe, and Walter, the weight of responsibility visible in his eyes. I'm not going to hide. We're going to take this forward. Jennifer looked happy and emotional. I'm proud of you, Michael. Chloe reached out for a high five. That's right. Let's show them who's in charge. Walter, more reserved, simply nodded. I hope you're ready for what comes next. Contact with the newspaper. That afternoon, Walter set up a meeting with his contact at the local newspaper. Michael, Jennifer, and Chloe gathered the documents and testimonies they had collected. The journalist, a middle-aged man named Sam, listened attentively as Michael shared his story. This is big, Sam said, flipping through the documents. But publishing this won't be easy. The hospital has powerful allies. That's why we need you, Jennifer said. They're trying to silence us, but if this goes public, they won't be able to hide the truth anymore. Sam looked at the group, clearly weighing his determination. Finally, he agreed. All right. You'll need a few days to confirm the information, but I can assure you that this story will be told. The new threat. When they returned to the hospital, the atmosphere was even more tense. Jennifer received a notice of immediate suspension, and Michael found out that his dinner had been forgotten. Calloway was playing hardball. That night, while Chloe and Jennifer were talking in Michael's room, Walter entered with troubling news. Calloway found out about the newspaper, he said. He's preparing a counterattack. What does that mean? Chloe asked. It means he'll do everything he can to discredit you before the story comes out. Michael took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what was to come. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but there was no turning back now. The St. Mary Hospital felt even more oppressive that morning. Michael immediately noticed the suspicious looks from the nurses, the murmurs in the hallways, the absence of Jennifer and Chloe. Calloway was playing hardball, and the warning couldn't have been clearer. Walter entered the room, carrying a grim expression. They're spreading stories about you, he said, closing the door behind him. They say you're exaggerating things. That you just want money. Michael clenched his fists. They're trying to destroy my reputation. It's more than that. I'm saying they're painting you as a danger to the hospital. If you're not careful, they might even try to forcibly remove you from here. Michael knew Walter was right. Calloway was ruthless and would do whatever it took to silence them before the story was published. The security breach. That afternoon, Chloe came into the room, breathless and clearly agitated. Jennifer has been officially suspended. She tried to come back today but was blocked at the entrance. Is she okay? Michael asked, worried. She is, but that's not all. I was looking at yesterday's records, and the files she found have disappeared. Disappeared how? Walter asked, frowning. They were removed from the system. Calloway is cleaning up any evidence before the newspaper publishes the article. Michael felt his stomach churn. Without the documents, they wouldn't have any proof of the allegations. We need to act fast, he said, trying to stay calm. Faster than you think, Chloe replied. I've heard rumors that they're trying to convince the journalist to drop the story. Marcy switches sides. In the midst of the chaos, Marcy appeared in Michael's room. This time, her demeanor was different. She looked nervous but determined. I need to talk to you, she said, closing the door. Michael looked at her, suspicious. Did you come to deliver more messages from Calloway? Marcy shook her head. No. I came to help. Walter raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. And why the sudden change? Marcy took a deep breath before answering. Because I'm tired of hiding. What they're doing is wrong, and I can't keep pretending I don't see it. Michael was still hesitant, but Jennifer always said that even the most unlikely people could surprise you. And how exactly do you plan to help? I have access to part of the system that they haven't cleaned yet, Marcy said. I can recover some of the files that Jennifer found. But I need someone to distract the security guards. I can do that, Chloe said, smiling confidently. The mission in the archives. That night, while Chloe distracted the security guards on the lower floor with a conversation about false maintenance issues, Marcy and Michael made their way to the file room. Walter stayed in the room, ready to raise the alarm if anything went wrong. Marcy unlocked the door with a key she had discreetly taken, and the two entered. The room was dark, illuminated only by the glow of the computer monitor. Do you know what you're looking for? Michael asked, staying close to the door. Yes. Jennifer told me exactly where the files were. Calloway deleted the records from the main system, but they might still be backed up. As Marcy worked on the computer, Michael listened intently to the footsteps in the hallway. Every sound felt like a rising alarm. Finally, Marcy let out a sigh of relief. "I got it." She copied the files onto a flash drive and handed it to Michael. "Here it is. Evidence that the patient died due to negligence." "You did it," Michael said, surprised by her efficiency. "I'm not done yet," Marcy replied. "We need to get out of here before someone notices." An unexpected obstacle. On their way back, the two crossed paths with one of the security guards. He looked them up and down, clearly suspicious. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Marcy smiled, feigning calmness. "We were checking the medication count. Jennifer asked me to look for some errors in the records before leaving." The guard hesitated but seemed to accept the excuse. "Get back to your posts quickly." When they finally reached the room, Chloe was waiting for them, exhausted but triumphant. "Did it work?" she asked. Michael pulled the flash drive out. It worked. The new threat from Calloway. The next morning, Calloway went to Michael's room, accompanied by two security guards. He no longer seemed willing to keep up appearances. "Mr. Harris, I have been informed that you are involved in activities that compromise the safety of the hospital." Michael stared back firmly. "I'm just trying to expose the truth." Calloway gave a cold smile. "A truth? Let's see if anyone believes you once they learn about your history. Rest assured, there are things you don't want coming to light." Michael felt his heart race. Was Calloway bluffing, or did he really have something against him? "It doesn't matter what you say about me," Michael replied. "It doesn't change what you did." "We'll see," Calloway said before leaving. Preparation for disclosure. With the flash drive in hand, Jennifer and Michael sent the files to the journalist, who assured them that the story would be published in 2 days. But the group knew that the coming days would be critical. "They're going to play dirty," Jennifer said. "We need to be prepared for anything." Michael looked at her, Chloe, Walter, and even Marcy. They were an extraordinary team, but at that moment, they were his only chance. "We're in this together," he said. Everyone agreed. But no one knew what Calloway might do next. 2 days later, the story was published. On the front page of the local newspaper, the headline was direct and shocking. "Deadly negligence. Patients expose St. Mary Hospital." The article detailed the case of the deceased patient, the recovered documents, and included an interview with Michael, who put his story in the spotlight. At the hospital, the impact was immediate. Staff whispered in the corridors, patients looked suspiciously at doctors and nurses, and the administration appeared to be on high alert. Jennifer entered Michael's room, holding the newspaper. Her smile was restrained but proud. "We did it." Michael looked at the headline and felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Relief at finally having told his truth, but also fear of what would come next. "Do you think it will work?" he asked. "They can't ignore this now." "It's in all the newsstands," Jennifer replied. "But don't think Calloway will just sit back." Calloway's counterattack. That afternoon, Calloway called a press conference at the hospital. In a calculated tone, he declared that the accusations against St. Mary were unfounded and based on misunderstandings. "We are committed to the health and well-being of all our patients," he said, looking directly into the cameras. "Unfortunately, there are people who are using individual tragedies to harm an institution that has served this community for decades." Behind the scenes, Calloway ordered lawyers to prepare lawsuits against the newspaper and threatened employees who might be involved in leaking the documents. Marcy, still working discreetly with the group, appeared in Michael's room with a worried expression. "He's playing hardball. They say he's going to demand an audit of all staff. If they find out I was involved, I'm done for." Jennifer placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're not going to let that happen, Marcy. You did the right thing." Michael looked at Marcy, who appeared visibly shaken. He knew that, just like him, she had a lot to lose. "We'll get through this together," he said. A twist in the night. That night, something unexpected happened. Walter, who had been the silent strength of the group, was found unconscious in the bathroom of the room. Jennifer was the first to rush to him, but it seemed that the veteran had been unconscious for some time. "He needs help now," Jennifer shouted as other nurses rushed to the scene. As Walter was hastily taken to the ICU, Michael felt his heart tighten. Walter had been the biggest supporter of the fight, and now he was in a critical situation. "This is my fault," he said softly. Chloe looked at him firmly. "It's not your fault. He always wanted to help, Michael. He knew the risks, but chose to fight the same way. The division in the group. The incident with Walter brought new developments to the group. Marcy began to question her decisions, while Chloe pushed for them to act faster. Chloe said, "We can't back down now. The story is out there. The public needs to hear more stories. More people like Michael." Marcy shook her head, hesitant. "What if Calloway manages to take us down? They have money, lawyers. I don't know if I can keep going." Jennifer tried to maintain calm among them. "We need to remember why we started this. It's for people like Walter, like Michael. We can't give up now." Michael, listening to the discussion, finally spoke up. "We can't let fear win. Calloway will do everything to intimidate us, but the truth is already out there. He can't erase that." A surprising new ally. The next day, while the group tried to reorganize their plans, they received an unexpected visit. Sam, the journalist responsible for the story, showed up at the hospital, accompanied by another man. "This is Dr. Howard," Sam said, introducing the gray-haired man. "He has worked here for over 15 years but requested a leave of absence after witnessing Calloway's practices." Jennifer opened her mouth in surprise. "Are you willing to speak publicly?" Dr. Howard agreed. "It's about time. I've seen too many wrong things here and couldn't change anything. But now that the story is exposed, maybe there's a chance to make a difference." Dr. Howard's presence gave the group a new energy. He brought stories that corroborated Michael's accusations, as well as documents that had gone unnoticed by the administration in the past. The final counterattack. With new allies and more attempts, the group began to plan their next move. Chloe suggested organizing a press conference with patients and staff willing to share their stories. Jennifer was particularly concerned, knowing that this would put everyone at greater risk. "Calloway will try to destroy us after this," she said. "Then let's make sure he can't," Michael replied. Walter, still in the ICU, was not present, but his struggle served as motivation for everyone. Michael knew this would be the biggest battle of their lives, but he decided to face anything to ensure the truth prevailed. The makeshift conference room was packed. Patients, journalists, hospital staff, and curious onlookers gathered to hear the voices that St. Mary Hospital tried to silence. In the center of the room, Michael prepared to speak. Jennifer, Chloe, Marcy, and Dr. Howard stood beside him, forming a line of defense that felt both likely and unbreakable. Walter was still in the ICU, but his fight was the flame that kept the group united. Michael looked at the small crowd in front of him and took a deep breath. It was time to turn years of pain into something greater. "Today, we want to show what really happens at St. Mary Hospital," he began, gripping the microphone with trembling hands. "It's not just about negligence. It's about a system that chooses who deserves to live and who is left to die." His voice, once hesitant, gained strength as he told his story. The lonely arrival in the city, the contempt he faced in the hospital, and the unexpected support from those who believed in him. Jennifer followed, explaining the abuses she had witnessed and the risks she would take by exposing them. "It wasn't easy to decide to do this. But I knew that if I stayed silent, I would be complicit in something wrong," Dr. Howard added, revealing even deeper secrets. He spoke of Calloway's direct orders to prioritize wealthy patients, even when it meant denying essential care to others. "I worked for years in this hospital, believing I was helping people. But I realized that, many times, the system here did more harm than good." Calloway's assault. As the press conference unfolded, Calloway was in an office on the upper floor. His expression was grim but controlled. He knew this event not only jeopardized his administration but also his personal negotiations. "Prepare the lawyers," he told an assistant. "And send someone to put an end to this now." Minutes later, 2 security guards entered the conference room, interrupting the conference. "This event is unauthorized," one of them announced, looking directly at Michael. "Everyone needs to leave immediately." But Michael did not back down. He held the microphone firmly and addressed the security guards directly. "You can take us out of here, but you can't erase what has already happened here." The crowd began to murmur in support. Some patients stood up and shouted, "Let them speak." The pressure mounted until the security guards were overwhelmed. Calloway, watching from afar, realized he was losing control. An unexpected turnaround. Just when everything seemed to stabilize, Walter appeared at the door, supported in a wheelchair. The group was surprised to see him, still visibly weak but determined. "I thought I was going to miss the show," he said with a tired smile. Michael rushed to help him enter. Walter looked at the microphone and asked for it. "I have been in this hospital for years. I've gone through things no human should endure. But I never had the courage to fight. These people here," he said, pointing to Michael and the group, "showed me that it's never too late to do the right thing." Walter's words moved the audience. It was the moment needed to solidify the cause. Calloway finds his end. The next day, the article about the press conference and the allegations made headlines in newspapers across the state. With the increase in public pressure, a formal investigation was launched against the hospital. Calloway was called to resign and face legal action for the irregularities. Jennifer was summoned to testify, but this time as a heroine exposing corruption. Chloe, for her part, used her position to organize a support group for other staff and patients who wanted to report abuses. After weeks of doubt, Marcy decided to leave the hospital, but not before providing more evidence to help solidify the case against the administration. Michael, although still facing his health condition, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. A new hope. Months later, St. Mary Hospital underwent profound changes. A new administration was hired, committed to correcting the mistakes of the past and rebuilding the community's trust. Reforms were planned in patient care, prioritizing equitable treatment and transparency. Michael, still facing the challenges of his health condition, found a new purpose. He began working at a local community center, sharing his story and helping others face their battles against a system that was often inhumane. Despite his physical limitations, his spirit had never been stronger. Jennifer remained at the hospital, promoting a supervisory role. Her presence became a symbol of integrity and the fight for justice. She used her position to ensure that no patient would go through what Michael and so many others had faced. Her relationship with Michael was strong, a friendship rooted in mutual respect and gratitude. Chloe became a vocal leader in advocating for healthcare workers' rights. With Jennifer's help, she founded an association dedicated to protecting employees from institutional abuses, ensuring their voices were heard. Walter, having recovered from his crisis, surprised everyone by volunteering at the same community center where Michael worked. He used his life experiences and past bitterness as tools to inspire others to find strength in moments of despair. The legacy of the fight. One morning, Michael and Jennifer returned to the community center. He watched the children playing outside while holding a notebook full of notes for a speech he planned to give at a local event. Michael said thoughtfully that he never imagined his voice would make a difference. Jennifer, sitting beside him, smiled and replied that he didn't just make a difference. He changed lives, including hers. Michael looked at her, feeling immense gratitude, and remarked that he believed they all had changed. Meanwhile, Walter waved at them as Chloe organized a small group of volunteers in the garden. It was a reminder that even amidst pain, it was possible to build something new. The struggle they shared left an indelible mark, not just on the hospital but on the surrounding community. They proved that the truth, even when painful, was the most powerful weapon they possessed. That afternoon, as the sun set over the city, Michael opened his notebook and began to write. Sometimes, courage starts as a whisper, a hesitant step toward what is right. But when we find people willing to walk alongside us, what was fragile becomes unbreakable. Pain can be beneficial, but what we do with it defines us. And together we can always create hope. As he wrote, the laughter of children and the sound of conversations filled the space around him. It was an ending and, at the same time, a new beginning. A reminder that even in the face of adversity, there is always room for redemption and change. Do you like love stories? Those stories full of romance, emotion and, of course, happy endings, or maybe just endings. Have you ever experienced a moment so strange or unusual that it seemed straight out of a movie? Then you're in the right place. Here we love to share stories that touch the heart, inspire and make you think. But we want to hear from you. Share in the comments your love story, that special moment, or even something that made you believe in the power of true feelings. Maybe your experience will inspire us to tell a new story in the future? Imagine seeing your story transformed into a tale that can move other people around the world. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like. This not only motivates me, but also shows me that sharing these experiences makes a difference. After all, together we can create a space full of love, empathy and good stories. So come on, like, comment and of course share. Maybe the next chapter will be inspired by you.